I say that somewhat in jest, like you had brought up. Not that people didn't know they're going to come down, but things were so rosy at the time that home prices kept rising. Interest rates were historically low, and the credit was easy to get.
Well, when you only have, I mean, I think that's a great comparison between the tech bubble and the housing bubble, right? I mean, the tech bubble was unprecedented because we'd never had a tech bubble before.
Correct.
I'm sure we've had housing bubbles in the past, but really, I mean, what do we have? Maybe 100 years of mortgage records? You know, it isn't very long, is it? You know, none of these trends, right? Because
correct.
And certainly the products that they were doing, you know, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, were they doing these CDOs?
No, things have gotten extremely complex, especially in the last 10 years. And there was an interesting thing I was reading just today, and they were talking about new regulation being proposed for Wall Street and for the banking industry specifically. And what happens is this complex financial engineering arises from roadblocks put in the way. So if there's more regulation put on, and I'm not arguing for or against regulation, but there's going to be some smart people out there that find out ways to, get around it, so to say.
Always are.
And that's how things get so complex, because nothing's really straightforward anymore.
Do you think we need to be quick to create new laws surrounding each, downfall and each negative trend that occurs, or just write them out and things will be okay?
There's an argument going on right now. One being we need to really help out the system right now so that it doesn't get worse. And then there's the flip side of that argument that says the financial system works on risk and reward, and if you don't get burnt once in a while taking the risk, then there's a moral hazard, and you really don't have to worry about taking risks anymore. Right. And so the argument is between.
Well, that sounds nice.
You're right. You know, if there's no downfall, why not put all your chips on the table?
And the obvious, retort to that is, there is no something for nothing.
Correct.
And you will pay the fiddler, right?
And that's really how.
That's what's happening now, kind of, right?
Theoretically, that's how the system works, and that's why there's a lot of people out there that's saying, let's just let this play itself out. This is how it's supposed to work.
It's important to feel consequences.
Correct.
Because consequences have to be felt, either eventually or, in a natural way. And if you delay the consequence, you delay the change in behavior, you delay the improvement, right? You delay the education, do you not? People won't learn from their mistakes if they don't feel the consequences of them.
And it's funny because it seems to happen again since 2002, after the last correction in the stock market. We've really been on a pretty just a steady incline since about October last year, and people got pretty fat and happy about the way the markets were going, and they kept on taking on more risk. There was so much risk being taken, and it wasn't getting compensated for, like we're talking the risk and return. So, some of that has to come back around once in a while.
Wasn't there some objective, wise people who saw this coming?
Oh, sure there was. And there were some investors that were calling this, well over 18 months ago, and they were saying, this is what's happening out there. This is how things are going. We see this tape playing out. And this is what's going to happen.
But the banks that are going bankrupt now, they didn't see it? Or what are you going to do, huh? I mean, what are you going to do?
There was a lot of money to be made out there, and, they didn't want to be the last one at the table, so to say.
Huh. Well, why wasn't there this sort of reaction to the tech bubble in 2000?
Restate that question.
Why was the housing bubble so much more catastrophic than the tech bubble?
Well, the housing bubble was because it affects people more personally. The tech bubble, it was their 401ks, their investment accounts, and that really hurts, especially people that are close to retirement. But we're talking about the housing bubble. I mean, that's your home. That's where you live.
Yeah.
You know, the American dream, like own your own house. And when that gets threatened, it's a lot more scary.
Well, where do we correct the mistakes that were made? What adjustments ought to be made from here on out? For the public, for the bankers, for the investors? You know, what are some of the lessons that you think ought to be learned by the players in this game?
I think that there are lessons that are learned in every market cycle, like I was saying about you know, not taking on too much risk, getting compensated for your risk. But those are a lot of questions that that are coming up this November, and you know, we'll see which way the political process goes, and see what comes of it.
To go back to that, because when you look at things real simply, it's just very bizarre how these big executives could screw up so badly. It just seems so surreal. Like it's only happening on TV,
right,
and on the internet, and it's not really happening. But I mean, you've got the let's just sort of break it down again. You've got the lender. He's giving out money to an individual who's not going to be able to pay it back, because that lender doesn't really care, because they're going to sell that debt to someone else. Is that right so far?
Simplified, but yes.
Yeah. And it's not that he's snickering while he's selling the debt to that other company, because they probably think it's going to be legitimately a good investment. I mean, it was just overall blind ignorance, right? Right? I mean, there was just some very obvious things that were not seen. Or
this goes back to hindsight's 20/20. While this was happening, there was taking it back to the to you and I, to the average person. People had seen a lot of appreciation in their home value. Loans were easy to get. They might want to take some equity out of their home to do some improvements, send their kids to college.
The average citizen really didn't know what they were getting themselves into either, did they? People were all kind of in la-la land, weren't they?
Correct.
They weren't seeing through the bliss of having a home and getting all this, I'm going to get a fat commission because I'm going to loan out $300,000 at 1%, so I'm going to make $3,000 with this person, $3,000 with that person, I'll make a cool $6,000 today, I'm a mortgage broker, and then the bank's going to go ahead and sell that money to the Lehman Brothers or whatever, and then they're going to sell to some guys and, whatever, right? So everyone's making their money because the money's moving, right?
Right.
And of course, the homeowner is happy because they're getting this big house, and it's like, oh my god.
There's a lot of people that really bought more house than they could actually afford.
And who's going to say no to that?
Right.
I mean, that's really it, isn't it? There's very few people who can turn down something like that. There's very few people who can turn down something that's too good to be true. I guess that's kind of a lesson to be learned, isn't it? Because I don't want to. I mean, everyone signed those mortgages who lost their homes.
Correct.
And they, as well as, of course, who doesn't want to believe that in 3 years they're going to be able to readjust to take up more equity? And I mean, if I'm used to always borrowing money to pay for my car, which has been going on now for decades and will continue to go on, no one pays cash for their cars hardly. Why not assume that I'll always borrow to buy a house and that I'll always be able to borrow more? It seems, I guess I could see how that could be, believed. And if I get to imagine, buying a wonderful home for my family or for myself or for a rental property or for investment or whatever, that's something I'm going to really want to believe. And it's really hard to not see that when the rest of society is going down that path, isn't it?
There's really no one to point the finger